Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca with co-host, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson, and writer and teacher Jessica. And joining us, community organizer socialist Kenny Cepeda. We are online at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find that link to our blog in the episode notes. You can also find our personal social media handles as at Don Eduardo Barca and at ZapTK on Instagram, and Jess's Twitter handle as at jhomie89. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, and share your favorite episode wherever you found this episode. Thank you. I have marbles in my mouth today, it seems like. Right. If anyone is watching, since we have viewers and we have listeners, but for our viewers, if anyone is seeing the video at this moment, we have Kenny on, which is the topic of our discussion today. Where has Kenny been? What's Kenny been up to? And who's seated next to Kenny? Welcome, Kenny. It's great to see you. I hope that we can have this chance to catch up with you. I know I've missed you. Andy, Jess has missed you. We've been thinking about you, and we expect that you'll share your journey with us since the last time you've been on. And also, if we can welcome Cristal. Hi, Cristal.
Hi.
Kenny's partner, but more than just his partner, which I'm sure we'll also get to know Cristal in this episode. And I hope that you'll share with us as much as you want, as much as you've also, both of you, gone on this journey since you've last left San Francisco and now live currently in, where is it exactly? If you can share.
The Central Valley of California. And
So,
I missed you all, by the way. And, I'm glad to be here, and I hope I can return at some point, but we'll share why, it's hard to do the episodes right now for me. But yeah, gets back to.
Yeah. Well, let's start off with just the basic questions. I guess, Andy, you can ask the first one. I think we can start off with some things that we'd like to share with the audience.
Well, first off, I was definitely looking forward to hearing what was up with Kenny and sharing that with our What's Left audience. But Cristal, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to our audience, because we know you're important to Kenny. We're becoming friends with you, and let our folks know what you're about and why you're here today.
So I'm originally from the Central Valley, from a small town called Livingston. And I moved to the Bay Area when I was 19, and I lived there for almost 12 years. So I've made a very drastic change alongside Kenny recently by moving out of the Bay Area and coming back to a place where, quite frankly, I never thought that I would come back to. But during my decade in the Bay Area, I was a working class young person, but I am a former organizer. I was organizing along a lot of the circles that Kenny was organizing with, and I'm also, I think it's safe to say, hopefully, well, knock on wood, a retired nonprofit worker. I don't think I would go back that route unless I had no other option. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, very basic, but and yeah, now I'm here at this stage in my life, and I am pregnant. We're expecting a baby. Very excited. We're 7 months, and just excited to navigate this part of our lives together, and also a little anxious, I guess, about what's to come, and what it means to raise a child in this world, where things are at now, in this environment specifically. Also, I'm learning. I don't have really a community here outside of my family. All my friends are in the Bay Area, so it's going to take some time, I think, to kind of get a better sense, because things have changed here as well. I don't know exactly everything about the culture, where people stand with stuff. Things have definitely moved in different directions. And so it's going to be interesting kind of learning, what that means also for our child.
And I just wanted to add one thing, that we planned to move before we found out we were pregnant. So that was a decision already in progress, and we found it to be a blessing in disguise, because I don't think we can think of raising a kid in the Bay, in San Francisco, especially under the circumstances that drove us away from it. It would have been impossible. And
people do it, right? But I think we had the opportunity to come here, which is a massive blessing. We had the space, and we had to kind of really take that into consideration. And like he said, then once we found out that there was a baby in the picture, we were just like, screw the jobs, screw everything. We're already miserable here for a million reasons, and we just needed to get out.
And I think I know some of the reasons that Kenny loved San Francisco at one point in time, and why he became miserable of it. What about you? Like, did you love San Francisco, and what were your reasons for it becoming miserable for you?
I loved San Francisco. I mean, part of me will always love San Francisco, the Bay Area. I owe absolutely so much to that environment, that city, the people. I cannot imagine myself without that part of my life. It's so instrumental. I've been the most free in San Francisco. I've learned the most in San Francisco. I've also lived in Oakland briefly, but I have, and just the Bay Area in general absolutely was necessary for me, I think, as a person. But as time went on, you get older, and it's hard. It's hard to have to just, play the game of the hamster wheel, right? Like of paying rent, and then that's it. And then I think things really, really solidified for me once the pandemic started. Everything changed. I think I changed, but also seeing how the city was changing. It just was no longer the place that was the sanctuary for me, that was the environment that allowed me to thrive, or that I saw, people, loved ones, neighbors, coworkers, like it was really hard. So I think it got just to the point where I found myself like pretty unbelievably being like, wow, I don't think that I'm gonna be here for the rest of my life. Like, whereas before I would have fought tooth and nail, to have made it happen there.
I'm curious about this because the question of raising a kid or bringing a child into the world has come up on What's Left. And Jessica's like, no, I would definitely bring a kid into the world. And Eduardo's like, no, let's not, not do that kind of thing. I would not do that. Obviously, y'all are choosing to do it, but how do you feel about it? Like, I think we're all seeing a very troubling world in the future. But can you say a little bit about how you feel about being parents at this moment? Is conflicted, not conflicted? I'm just curious.
And maybe if I can add to that question, it was unplanned, is what you're saying.
No.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to.
Okay. I'm not.
It wasn't.
I did.
No, we actually talked about this last night. That
okay.
I don't think I have never seen myself not being a parent. Like being a parent was always part of my plans. That's what yesterday I asked what she thought about this attitude, right? A lot of people don't want to have a kid, and how do we? And it's an increasing thing, right? And not to place judgment, but just what we make of it. Why? Why is this happening? And so, but do you want to speak about your?
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like there's, again, I'm maybe just acting out of my understanding of the world because of what the Bay Area has made my understanding of the world be. But I mean, at least in the Bay, there's so many people who are, in their 30s, 40s and don't have kids yet, or probably won't. Whereas I think growing up, the idea was I mean, I thought growing up here, by the time I'm 24, I'm going to have my bachelor's, I'm going to have a house, I'm going to pay my dad's house, I'm going to have a car, and I'm going to have a kid, and I laugh at that now. That's no, that's just not the reality. And I think there's a lot of things that come into play. Like, it's a very different world. My parents are both immigrants, and even then, like, the way that things were at that place and time, and the support that my dad had, because he has many brothers, and so some of them had already migrated here. It was just a different world. Like, owning a home was a different reality. Like, I also talked to him about, like, the culture is just different in general. Like, I think people were perhaps maybe more religious, and just like, so that also comes into play. Like, and then also, you know it's really hard. It's really hard when, like, you're just in survival mode, or trying to figure out where you're going to take your laundry in the Bay Area, because you don't have a washer dryer. um and then also, I think there's a lot of people who think, like, the world, there's not enough resources, it's overpopulated, or like, why would I do this? Like, this is going to be harmful to, so there's like a million factors. And I think, but I do think in general, like, at least from, like, the people that I know, a lot of people either want kids, but just, like, that's not going to happen because, like, they don't have the means to, they don't, or they don't want kids because, like, they don't have the means to, or they just don't have that. I don't know if I'm making any sense
No,
right now.
I think it's a great point. And like, just overall, I think we do have certain concerns about raising our kid.
Yeah.
Not that, we do have a support system. That's another thing to make clear. We have a support system here. We've had the support of our parents, or my mother, my brother, and so in some ways a lot easier than we imagine it would be for other people. It's still hard, like, trying to think about health insurance, trying to think about education, vaccines, no vaccines, the all those things that we talked on what's left, technology. And we've had plenty of these conversations. And Cristal has been in the background in a lot of recordings, so she's heard the conversations. And I also talk nonstop, like, she tolerates my incessant talking and obsession over things. But I think we share, very, like, the concerns that have been brought up on the show, regarding, being human, staying human, for our kid, because they will grow up in a different reality. I think, like, especially post pandemic, it's just insane how much technology is in the face of kids, in so many angles. And we are very aware, and we talk about, a life that's an alternative to that, and but it's also hard to reach that alternative. It's, because we want to, I think, if we had our way, we would grow up in a more rural, area full of animals and plants, and have our kid learn from that, rather than go to an institution where they get indoctrinated, and they get taught to stay in line, or get punished, right? Because you're part of this system, right? A future worker, and that's it. So we definitely have these conversations. We definitely have things to navigate. The things we don't have answers for yet. Like, for example, like the vaccines. Like, I am, obviously, my ideas of vaccines have been shaped through my experience with the whole pandemic, and just not trusting anything we've been told. And re-examining and revising everything I believed before, and where we place our trust. And I think, I don't know where you stand, and like, but I think it's definitely something we're still navigating.
Yeah, I think we were having all these conversations, and it's important and necessary. But I at least I feel like once baby's here, like, it's gonna be a hell of a ride, like, actually, like, facing these things. And so, like, I tell him, like, I don't want to put a lot of weight into saying, I'm not going to do this, you know, I'm going to be like this, because I don't know. I don't know what that reality is going to be like. And, you know, I don't know what she's going to be like. I don't know what her needs are going to be like. And so I'm definitely trying to be open about stuff, while still like setting a foundation, I think, for like what it is that we definitely want to strive to not do, what we want to strive to do. And I think one of the big ones for sure is the technology. And that's going to be really hard. And then we've already gotten a glimpse of the vaccine stuff, because like they've already started trying to vaccinate me. And honestly, I'm a little nervous because I have my next like OBGYN appointment later this month. And I'm pretty sure they're going to ask me, because I should have already gotten a vaccine. And they told me it was going to be the, the Tdap. But come to find out like a little later that it's not just the Tdap. It's like a cocktail. It's like there's multiple things involved. And that wasn't mentioned to me whatsoever. You know, she was just like, oh, you need to get this. It's safe. You know, it's blah, blah, blah. And like, okay. And so I don't know what things are like now in terms of even like when if we wanted to enroll her into school, like what sort of vaccines are going to be mandatory, you know, and what does it even look like to be somebody who would want to fight that, who would want to, you know, advocate against that. And, you know, what does it look like here in this area? Because I mean, I know California is one thing, right? And I don't know what kind of community exists here in terms of like what people think about that.
Because we do live in a more rural area, you know, I think it resembles a little more middle America, even though it's still California, it's a hybrid, but absolutely there's a bunch of American flags around. If that means anything, right? Because, you know, that also doesn't mean people are monoliths, but there is definitely a little more, like, if you would say, conservative leanings than the Bay Area, for example. But we don't know what that means in terms for vaccine and like resistance to like these mandated things. And we're actually listening to the episode with Amanda over, you know, the vaccines. And, you know, because I obviously have had a little more exposure than she has. And so, but it's a decision that we both have to make, right? Like, you know, I can't impose my way, but you know.
Yeah, I think last thing I'll add to that is like, I've told him, like, I'm not going to just believe what anyone tells me, like, including him. Like I want to know more, like, I want to understand, you know, I want to like really, it's going to require like investing time, obviously, you know, and continuing to have these conversations. And, you know, he talks about it a lot, but like trying to find other people that perhaps, hopefully, that are in the area that, you know, maybe have navigated similar things. So we'll see how that goes.
I just wanted to say briefly, just about kind of when you guys were discussing like just the prospect of having children and the uncertainty. Like I find what you said, Cristal, like really refreshing. The part about just being like not committing to like, this is the way I'm going to do it. This is the decision that I'm going to make. Because I think, I don't know, I see that everywhere, just like this rigidity of like, whether it's with children of like, you know, I need these 10 things. And then if I have those, then I'll be ready to have children, or at this age or in this neighborhood, right? Or even with other parts of life, right? Like nobody knows what the future is going to look like. And like you said, I don't think you can ever really know what decisions are going to be right for you until you're making them, right? And I mean, that's, I imagine, probably a big part of that shift from, you know, like maidenhood to motherhood, or to, you know, to being a parent, is like, whoa, you're going to be bombarded by like all these super high stakes decisions in relation to this little person who's going to be like everything to you. And yeah, I mean, I think like what Andy was referencing with like Eduardo and I talking about, I think that was more like the political things about like, oh, like having a child as sort of a political decision, you know, whether it's like climate change or gun control or whatever, like that context. But I also think, I don't know, just like, yeah, like the personal and the political, like it's always connected, of course. But I do think that just, I don't know, I think for me, I don't like if we accept that, oh, like the world is just so horrible that no one should bring children into it. Like I just don't really understand that. Like I guess I understand that perspective intellectually, but even if you're not gonna have kids, like I don't what a like it's just, I don't know, it would be a too sad way for me to live my life. I don't know where you guys want to take it, Andy and Eduardo, but I wanted to hear more just because like Cristal, you already kind of started with the vaccine thing, talking a little bit about your like pregnancy journey. So I kind of want to hear more about that. Like I know you've been navigating like the medical system, not just the vaccine thing, but like more broadly. I'm really curious just about your like your whole pregnancy journey so far. 7 months, like that's a long time. You're like
Just want to share a quick thought on that whole, having children pressure. That I think there's definitely a distinction because here in the Valley, there's people our age who have teenagers, and so versus the Bay Area where like the quote unquote more educated, civilized people, right? So it's definitely like a contradiction. Like people are having babies here, versus the Bay Area.
Yeah. Well, I know what I was gonna say. I'll just shoot it in because it relates to that. But like, I think there's the political pressure, but then there's also like the material, and I mean, obviously you need material resources in order to be a parent. Like you need food for yourself and your child. You need shelter. You need safety. And even like before the child, like right now, you need, a different form of care, Cristal, right? Probably you need more rest. You need, in my personal opinion, not to be forced to like work if you're not feeling like you want to work for 9 months and then postpartum, right? But I also think there is a pressure of like, I mean, our parents' generation, I think all of us except for Andy are within a few years of each other in terms of age. Like it was realistic for a lot of them to have a house, and it's not. And I don't like the shame that I see being put on people, like kind of including myself when these conversations come up of like, I don't think you have to have a house that you own to like be a successful parent. I don't think you have to have X number of dollars in your bank account. Of course, yeah, you do need material resources. But I don't know. I don't like the pressure that's put on people of like, oh, irresponsible parent if you're a renter, or not that everybody feels that way, but I know I've encountered it.
I think we both have like the fortunate experience of our parents, in that they made it with a lot less, in some ways, like, and we're here, and we're okay, we're people, yeah.
Anyway, tell us about your pregnancy.
Or before, I don't know if I can make a comment too. Yeah. I mean, I am the only one on this the whole time that has said that people shouldn't have children, and that's not and that's not directed mostly towards. It's not directed towards anyone specifically. I say that before Kenny knows this, that I've said this before on What's Left before Kenny was on here. So I should just state, since Andy mentioned that I've said I don't want to have children. I don't want to have children. I fostered a child, so it is a challenge. And what you talked about, Cristal, whether about technology and how you're going to raise your child and what comes with that, it's like, oh my goodness. To this day, it's like hard for me to imagine the choices and decisions that my former charge, is taking. It's like Jane Goodall, who raised her child in Africa, and suddenly he's part of the animal trade. So it's like they're going to be the opposite of what you hope or want them to be. I raised with organic foods and had him and left to another country and raised him with other kids that were in a network of families that were unschooling their children. And yet, it's not going to turn out to be the way that you are hoping they're going to be. That's always just going to be the matter of life. And now that I'm co-raising my nephew, and technology. He's never been around tech and screens, and suddenly school is all about that. And I have to push back. So it's going to be a challenge, you know. And then I hear, obviously, the stories of many of my experience of working in the school district, especially at elementary level. I know, Andy, you worked in high school, but when you hear the stories of 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds with families that have no network, don't have any network, and kids that come from trauma, and that children that come from abusive families, which doesn't describe your relationship and the child you'll bring into this world. That's part of the reason why I'm like, oh my goodness, people should not have children, you know. So there are reasons behind that. I think it's clear. It's just so much of the world obviously is not as healthy and sustainable, and that makes me sad for the children who aren't going to have that safety net. No. And I know you all have encountered that, families like immigrant families, especially in the immigrant community, that have to cross multiple borders and countries to give them a better life, and then they still come here, and it's not the better life that they imagined, and then it's not having the resources that we have. And Kenny has called out, he doesn't say privilege, but has called out my way of life that is very different from most San Franciscans, which, you know, you've said before you left on, I think at the last episode you were in, because I was saddened that you were leaving San Francisco, Kenny, and you said, well, it's not that easy, Eduardo, you know. And it is a difficult life to live here in SF, in an expensive city, and an expensive capitalist system that it's not encouraging to have children, right? I don't know if anyone want to make a comment on that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, like, for me, the thing that it terrifies me, like, so towards the end of us living in SF, we were living close to the marina in Cow Hollow, and on Van Ness, there were a bunch of those self-driving cars. And so when we'd be driving, especially at night, during that time, I don't know what has changed, you know, since October, but they would be driving themselves, you know, there wouldn't be anybody there. So, like, I'd be in the passenger seat and I'd look, and it was, I remember, like, that fear never left my body, like seeing the car without a person in it. And I just know, like, that for me was like, hell fucking no. Like, I do not want my child to think that's normal. That is not normal. So I don't know, that just came to my mind. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I mean, no, I just, yeah. I'm glad that we're out, you know, and that we don't see scooters everywhere. You know, just like the other day, we caught up on, like, social media, and someone that you know, part of our circle got run over by a scooter, like on the sidewalk, big time, you know, and then, you know, broke her wrist and got bruised up, and, like, you know, and a lot of these things don't get questioned, right? And, like, you know, of course, it's complicated. People use technology out of necessity, right? Like, a lot of cooks in San Francisco use them to get to their other job because they had to have 2 jobs, you know, and it's cheaper than paying Uber or Lyft now, or having to wait for the bus. You know, it's complicated, but yeah, like, that's not normal, you know. You know, and it's kind of refreshing to be away from all that, you know. And parts of me, we're gonna be shocked when we go back, and we see some of the changes, because we haven't been back in months, and not to visit or anything, and so don't miss that at all. You know, that's not necessary. And thank you. No,
It does sadden me that a lot of people are leaving, you know, SF. When I go to my child's school, and I see one more family deciding to leave. And it's all these, especially Black and brown communities, that are not staying. And SF is not a child friendly. I think it's one of the cities with the least amount of children per, like, as major cities. And so I'm very saddened, of course, that the exodus of diversity, the people that make up beautiful working class SF are leaving. And I've already expressed this. Just the other day, I was 2 weekends ago, Ananda Fuara just closed, which is right there by the library. And after 40 years, it was one of the places that I, as a vegetarian, went to. And I remember when they were in Taraval, and then they moved there. And I remember I just yelled out that week, and I just yelled it. I said, "Thank you." Everyone was eating. It was packed. People were sad, but no one was saying anything. And I just yelled out and I said, "Thank you so much for providing 40 years of service in Andafuara." And someone recorded me. Maybe it'll show up somewhere. I doubt it. But I expressed so much gratitude. But it's also this sad exodus of long-standing businesses that have made up SF, people like both of you, people like the families that make up SF. It's just, this city is slowly becoming richer and richer and richer. And I forget how many billionaires live here.
And also poor and poorer. Like, I want to say that too. Like, I mean, I was working in the Tenderloin. I've lived in the Tenderloin, but like working there, especially like after the pandemic started and stuff. I mean, just the mass amounts of people that lost their living situations and that were navigating that. I mean, I'm sure you know too, Eduardo, like seeing the mission and seeing like 24th and like what that looks like now, and also like how ugly how people respond to that. It just like broke my heart every single day. You know, it's really hard to see, and I think I haven't fully processed a lot of that yet, honestly, because like I've just been, you know, obviously dealing with my pregnancy and everything. But I think like it took such a severe mental and emotional and physical toll on me, like seeing that. And like I think, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say, like, all of these things, all of these components are like what drove us to not want to be there anymore. Like we wanted to run away, you know?
Because I think the irony at the time, like towards the end, was that as I was working at this fancy restaurant with rich people, you know, they come and spend like $200-300 on a meal per person, buy a $300, $400 bottle of wine. And she was working as a housing coordinator at a nonprofit for women that faced like abuse and what do you say, like extreme housing needs.
Yeah.
And so it was the complete end, you know, to the two extremes of the reality that is San Francisco. And, you know, that definitely, like I said, I was there, like it took an emotional toll on her, you know, having to go and see people that live on the streets and see how the systems are built to like pretend like they're doing something and just present a facade of progress and, you know, like care for humanity, while, you know, like the structures are literally just symbolic, you know, because she was navigating all that. And so all of these things, you know, informed our, I think, us getting fed up and tired, you know, with the show and the facade.
And then going home to like just out of like, I never thought I would live in Cal Hollow. I lived there because I found an apartment during the pandemic that was really affordable, just because a lot of people had moved out of that area. So it was just even like harder to then have to like leave work and then go to that neighborhood. Like I had never lived in that part of San Francisco. I'd always lived like either in the Mission or the surrounding area or like the Tenderloin. So it was just really difficult because it was like both gratitude for having like an apartment,
nice
and a really nice studio apartment, you know, like really, really nice and like, you know, quote unquote, like safe and clean or whatever, and
relatively affordable, even though we were making ends meet, and
yeah,
we were making the most we were making ever together, and we were not saving any money at all.
Yeah.
And so, and just for context, that area, if people don't know San Francisco, Cow Hollow is more of the like more privileged, old money, and like hip, you know. But like again, these are the people that would go to the restaurant that I worked at, and you know, you would see like vintage cars and Ferraris and stuff. And so it's another reality, and you know, in that place, I didn't exist. You know, people often clutch their purses, you know, literally would cross the street because, you know, like both of us, like the way she dressed, like she wasn't dressed as a hip, you know, rich Lululemon type of person. And like we didn't fit there, and like we never had community there. Like we were always like weird, and like there was nothing inviting about that. And so again, all these things just sorry if I interrupted you, but yeah, just again, this added up to just being disenchanted with San Francisco, because as you said, Eduardo, everyone or a lot of people that we knew left to Oakland, or if they were becoming parents, they had to leave the city. You can't raise a kid in the city if you don't own a house, or, you know, it's just hard.
I mean, people do. It's just really hard.
It's mostly immigrant people.
Yeah.
It's mostly because immigrant people have to do, but, you know, we do have a different set of expectations because we were raised here, and like, you know, like we're not okay with living in a room, you know, with 6 people, you know, and I'm not saying that, you know, that's what it should be, right? But like a lot of immigrants, that's the only option. That's what I did when I migrated to this country. You know, I was living in a room with 6 people.
And I lived in a home where there was people living with like their kids in a room, and like we shared like an in-law. Like that's just absolutely the reality for a lot of people raising kids. So yeah, that like coupled with like, I'm scared. I'm scared for the technology in like as like in elementary school, Eduardo, like what the fuck? Like technology's always been part of my life. I think more so even than Kenny's, like growing up, like I did absolutely watch TV and like all of that, but it was an activity. It wasn't like I wasn't just like, you know, glued to a tablet or like I went outside to play. Like I played with dirt, you know, like I would go to my grandma's house and where she had no internet, and, you know, she grew her vegetables, and she was absolutely a person who was like of the old world. And I'd go and I'd mix things in her kitchen and pretend I was making food. Like it was hands-on, you know, and that's my biggest fear. Like, and I know I'm sure it exists here too. Like, you know, that movement towards like incorporating more technology that's everywhere. So as much as it like scares me, in SF, like again, circling back here, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect, but I do fear for some scary things along the road.
Because we do know some people with kids about our age, and like some family members, and they have young kids, and, you know, I think that's informed at least my expectations on not being too rigid, right? Because there's a reality that you have to deal with as a person making ends meet. Because like this person knows a lot about, you know, childbirth and blah blah blah, and she swore not to use technology at all, you know, but she's found herself, and she knows, she's aware that she has said no, I was not going to do this, but then, you know, having to deal with reality, and like technology is part of the kid's life, you know, and obviously there's this programming, right, of like and associating technology with progress and future and opportunities and education, and also this sense that you don't want to fall behind, right, or like your kids can fall behind compared to other kids, because that is the train that is gonna, you know, that's moving forward. And so like I don't think we share that sense, but it's still hard when other kids are gonna be using technology, because like
my parents,
they're
glued to a tablet. I'm like, you know, like that's gonna be hard too, you know, like it's not just like the external, but it's also like the internal, like the cousins, you know, they're everything, like, so we shall see.
I mean, I think it's a very different thing when like we're using tech to stay connected, to do this episode, to find research, than what they're beginning to have conversations at my child's school about having virtual tours as field trips, you know, which is completely different. The kind of, you know, okay, just connect children so they can have a field trip outside of the classroom. Outside the classroom, they're in the classroom, right? But that's the tech that I'm pushing back, that very different from what we're doing here, to just record, find research, share information, talk to one another, then to, you know, and that's, I'm hoping we we fight that, and parents don't give into that kind of technology, right? I think the tech that you described, Cristal, growing up is watching cartoons or television shows or whatever. They're very different from how they're trying to impose today, which is scary, very scary.
Just a quick thing, and I do want to circle back to Jessica's question about the pregnancy journey, and I definitely will get there. Two things I'm reminded of in this conversation is, Cristal, your name came up earlier when Kenny went to Canada and to visit his dying cousin. Kenny, can you remember the name? Sergio, right. But there was a story about how there were kids who were all on their tablets or something like that, or all on electronics, and you did a bunch of work with them to be like, get them outside. I remember he told us the story about that. So that's pretty amazing. And the only thing I would say, Eduardo, is I feel like me, Kenny, and Eduardo used to meet at one location and record this. This is a concession. This is I would say what we're doing here is exactly what, Cristal, you're talking about, is like what are the compromises we're going to end up making? And of course I love being able to talk and having Jessica here, but it's still a concession. And I feel like it's a concession to the system a little bit to be forced to have our program this way. But I understand we do this in the hopes of undermining this, but I still feel like it's a concession compared to what we would be trying to do to get together, trying to convince Jessica to relocate with Nate back to the Bay Area or something like that, whatever. But that's because to do in person, you can do it if you insist, but
master schools, right?
Right. Yeah. So,
but there's a difference, Andy. I think that what we're talking about, like I just described what they're trying to do in my nephew's school versus what we're doing. And I think that you have to make those choices consciously, what's allowable and what's not. Constantly, I'm deciding that in our household, my nephew who is wanting to do video games, and we're like, something else other than that. Everybody is.
Sorry. Like,
no, go ahead.
Personally, I don't want to lose sight that, again, we're being mediated right now. It's not like when we're in person, like, this can be stopped, at some point, or in some way, or, and I don't know who said this, but like, I don't want to forget that I'm seeing electrical signals that become images. I'm not seeing you. I'm not touching you, because I do, right now that you talked about those moments, Lipson, I was brought back to a different feeling, a different experience of being in person, like seeing your, like feeling your stress or not, or, smelling you guys, or, it's not the same. And like, I don't want to forget that. And I want to fight to get back to that in some way, because like you said, these are concessions, but if you make too many concessions, you fucking lose the whole war. And like, yes, sometimes you have to backtrack to, push forward, but, I don't want to lose sight of that. Like, that again, what we want to strive for is like, because we daydream, right? Like, why would we do if like we had our way, like we had those resources to do our thing. And like, for us, it's family. For us, it's being together in person, getting together, and like eliminating those variables that keep people from getting together. Because even here, yes, we moved here to be close to family. We rarely see her parents. Like they live like 10, 15 minutes away. We still rarely see them because they're always working. I'm always working. My schedule sucks, and so it's still hard, and like, there is phone calls, but it's not the same, and then like, I'm a person who struggles at a distance with relationships. I always have. Texting and phone calls is not enough for me. I have to be in person. I have to, like, and like, if any of my friends are listening, I'm sorry. That's just, they know that's the way I am. I just struggle at a distance. And, but yeah, I don't know if you want to get back to the pregnancy experience and the medical system.
Yeah, I've learned some things being pregnant. I mean, none of it is surprising. I think, a lot of the last 2 years when I was working at the nonprofit, like I learned a lot about, I just got a more intimate look and, established a more intimate relationship at how a lot of these systems that supposedly help people, make it actually exponentially more difficult for a lot of people. And I'm not denying that, things like nonprofits or government assistance, don't make an impact in a lot of people's lives, because they do. But just where, you see the one successful case, there's 100 more that are not, and I think that's important to recognize. But yeah, I am navigating, like, receiving for the first time in my life, like, government assistance, and I have Medi-Cal and uh, a blessing. A blessing, or okay, maybe I shouldn't say that. Let me say this. It's been like great to be able to go to the doctor and not have to pay anything out of pocket. And at the same time, I talk to him, like, I think I'm somebody who, like, I can speak English, I can read English, I can write English. I have certain levels of advocacy skills for myself and other people. I'm and even then, like, it's incredibly fucking difficult for me to be able to, like, advocate for myself in certain situations, to get basic information from people like my case manager who's supposed to be helping me. um Quite honestly, the way that the system is set up is that people are treated as a number. Like, people, it is a fucking business. Like, it really is. There's no, like, true humanity that's there. And yes, there are certain people, that will bring that humanity into, like, this world, um it's been, it just makes me think of all of the people who don't have access to understanding what their rights are, who don't, who don't have access to advocate for themselves, who cannot speak or understand what they're being told. Like, I think every pregnant person should have a doula. Like, every pregnant person should have somebody, like, who can really spend time to work with them to, what their needs are, to inform them. And unfortunately, that costs money. So that went out the door for us, and for a lot of other people. And like, I also find myself, like, flabbergasted at people who, like, doctors who, for example, one of them who I had, who just absolutely treated me like shit, who clearly gave no fucks about me, my body, my baby. I received, like, a pap smear that made me cry. I have never cried in a pap smear, and I've had multiple pap smears in my life. Like, and so I had to talk to a different doctor, and I had to, like, advocate and say, I cannot see that person. How many other people don't know that they can do that, or feel ashamed, or feel like they can't, say those things, So it just infuriates me, because you have people who are providing care, whether they're in the medical field or in the nonprofit field or in, like, the government, whatever, and they're not they're not treating people with humanity or dignity, or, they're fed up, or, so it's been hard. And uh again, like, flabbergasted at my case managers and how hard it is to contact them, because, like, I know from being, like, a case manager, like, in having a physical space that, like, our clients could go to when I was working at the nonprofit, it makes such a difference. Whereas, like, all of these other systems, like, I can't go see like, I have to call them or email them, and I have to wait, usually, like, for days until I hear back. And, so it's just been, it's been difficult. And I've been trying my hardest, to, like, spend time to tell him to, like, how he can advocate for me during pregnancy, because, like, once I'm there, in the hospital in labor, like, I'm gonna need some support. And, unfortunately, again, there is no doula, there is no midwife in the picture here. I think everybody should have access to that. and absolutely everybody who's pregnant should have the ability to not have to work, like if they don't want to, if they can't. I could not imagine having to work during this time. I thankfully haven't had to. And it is weird because I've always worked and had my own income and stuff like that. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to add anything.
Oh yeah, for me, I've been learning a lot, and the truth is that most of the research and knowledge regarding pregnancy has been done by Cristal. You know, I've had my own sets of stresses, you know, on the side and you know, we find ourselves in this situation that I don't think necessarily we plan for, but you know, we're like this division of labor, right? Like I'm the guy going out to the market to get, you know, sell my time for money, right? And she's the one like keeping the house. She's a housewife, and I don't think, you know, if you guys know us, like that's not what we would have planned.
Yeah.
But you know, that's what's like working for now. And in the process of learning about just pregnancy, the whole process, you know, that she has dedicated a lot of time to. I've learned so many things. Like, you know, I also had to unschool myself, right, in terms of giving authority to these doctors and all these nurses and the system itself, right, and be there, you know. And I know that the day of delivery, I'm gonna have to be there and be strong and really advocate for her wishes, you know, and to make sure that she's comfortable because. And as we've learned, a lot of times they do whatever the hell they want. You know, you are a product of a market system. You know, in the hospitals, you know, they just want to get you out. Like we know another, this at least it comes up to my mind, another of her family members feels that they didn't have to have a C-section, but they were kind of like rushed into it. And apparently that happens a lot, you know, in the system. And because again, there is no advocacy, and you know, I think our battles began at, not even just like with this insurance stuff right now or the healthcare, but getting pregnant too was a process. I don't know if I'm allowed to speak about the.
Yeah.
So Cristal has had fibroids, and that have produced a lot of pain and issues throughout her life, and I don't think you knew until like later.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't know until later.
You should have known, right? Like when she was younger, but again, many ways the medical system, right, the fails, and so she switched from one insurance to another in order to get better care. But this was in the period of COVID, right? And so we thought that she was gonna get better care for the fibroids, so we can get, you know, pregnant. And I think that's where the whole having to call places started. You know, even before we even knew we were gonna be pregnant, because like she was getting tossed around through systems, to emails that weren't getting answered, calls that weren't getting returned, and then also being pushed to do telehealth, right? That they try to do that. They try to encourage her to go into the telehealth branch of these. What was the hospital? UCSF, which is supposed to be like a very specialized place for fibroids, but they were just tossing her to the telehealth system. And long story short, is like that's another space where I've learned to not just deflect, you know, and give power over our lives to the so-called experts and educated people, because like, you know, just like you guys talked on that with Tom about, you know, virology as ideology, you know, like no, these people don't know everything. They're part of the system. You know, ultimately it is our lives, and I'm hoping that I can get those teachings, you know, and be there during one of the most traumatic, potentially traumatic experiences for all of us, you know, including our baby, and hopefully we can come, you know, out out of that.
Wait, are you anticipating it being traumatic? I just, for either of you.
Well,
I could understand why, but I just.
I wonder if you mean that because like, it's like a very like.
Well, I think it's because of our situation, because there could be potential issues for the birth, like because there is a fibroid involved. So there might have to be a C-section. We don't know yet. There's still because it is a significant one, and we actually have another appointment to see where it's at. And I think that's when we're gonna know more. But as at the moment, yes, I'm afraid that they're just gonna wanna because they just want to treat her as a product, because they do that, and that's what the system is built for. And so yes, I am on guard. I am on guard for that day.
I'm on guard in the sense, like, if I do have a natural birth, like, I don't know what my doctors will be like, but I do know of a lot of cases where if the labor is not like going quickly enough, like, they're gonna be pushing drugs on you. They're gonna be doing. I've been doing some reading with like this this woman who like is more of like a natural approach to birthing, and I say natural, but so I'm cautious of that, but otherwise I'm hoping this is going to be lovely and beautiful, and that it's not just going to be trauma and
I guess I'm gonna be watchful for them not to rush anything.
Yeah, because I don't. Sorry, I just want to add, like, where I stand, like, I don't know what it will be like in the moment, but I would like to try to not have to have any drugs or epidural or the pectin or whatever the hell they inject you with, like
Tosin.
That one, pectin. What's pectin? That's like for canning, isn't it? Oh God. Anyway,
close enough.
That thing. So we'll see.
Well, the thing that comes across for me, and this is going to be a question, is increasingly a number of our people who've come onto What's Left have drawn us closer and closer to talking about the reproduction industry in the United States, and giving me more the sense. And maybe I'll put the question is to you, is I almost get a sense that as you enter into this industry, you feel like you're more behind enemy lines operating than into a place that's welcoming and one that's actually going to assist you in realizing, bringing a healthy life into the world and things like that. I feel more like you're operating under war conditions than sanctuary conditions. And that's the sense I get. So maybe tell me if that's accurate, because I'll just leave it at that.
No, I think it is. When someone cares about you, like, when somebody like is actually like committed to your health, your well-being. I've seen it with like a lot of, well, not a lot, but some of the coworkers who I had in the nonprofit field when we were like dealing with our clients, and I've had like certain healthcare people in my life that have shown that for me. And so I think like maybe a lot of this stems from, well, first of all, like, I think everything that has happened and like our understanding of like the world. And I'm not saying that like, oh, every fucking health professional is bad and they don't care about me or they don't care about people. I don't think that's true. But we know that when people are working under certain systems, I think it would be foolish for me or anyone really to just think that these people have like my actual best interest in mind, or my baby's best interest in mind. And so I think like a lot of the people who have been part of my pregnancy journey in the medical field have kind of shown me indifference, or just like, haven't really spent the time, haven't really invested that sort of like relationship building that I feel like should be absolutely important. That trust, I'm just kind of blindly going in and keeping my fingers crossed that, these people are gonna be supportive and, have my best interest in mind and my baby's best interest. But I don't know. I think that's where at least like my cautious side comes up. And yeah, like that. And again, just like this whole like nonchalant, like, oh, we're going to give you this medication, you know, or take this, it's no big deal. And it's like, but there's no other information that goes along with it. And that just pisses me off.
Cristal, I want to ask, are there areas in thinking about your upcoming birth, are there areas where you do feel like you have autonomy, like either that you've cultivated or are in the process of cultivating? Like, where do you feel like, hell yeah, I got this?
Yeah, I mean, I think in certain, like, I don't know a lot, and even though I've done like some reading, you know, there's always more to learn. But I think with like basic stuff, which is what I've been trying to have these conversations with him too, like, I want to be able, like, I think that I do have a sense of being able to like ask or talk to my doctors or nurses and be like, what's going on here, or like why, or you know, like, so I think in that way, yeah. Because like ultimately, like I know that I have a right to say no in a lot of things. You know, I have a right to say no, even if it feels like I don't have that right, even if it feels like it's the law, you know, or whatever. So I'm not scared in that sense. I think that's always been something about me, which is why I got in a lot of trouble in the nonprofit world. But yeah, I don't know if you feel there's anything else. I can't really think of anything else.
I think the one thing I'm super grateful for is the space that our child will be brought into.
Oh yeah.
And like, it is safe, you know, in the sense of like, she won't risk being evicted, you know, or or having a landlord that's gonna, you know, limit whether she can fucking fuck up the walls or not. You know, and
it's for grandpa.
You know, and so that absolutely gives me confidence that she'll be okay. And like, you know, yeah, because outside of this, I don't. It's hard. It's a grind. It's a fucking war. You know, whether it's the medical system, whether it's work, whether it's healthcare, whether it's food. You know, like it's hard. You know, like, you know, we, for example, she cooks a lot. Like, you do most of the cooking right now, and we use a lot of produce, you know, and our trash can is a lot dirty or like pretty full because we cook a lot. We're not like a lot of other families who have like frozen meals and stuff. And so, but even then, like, I'm not, because we think we eat healthier, you know, like we still don't have access to like healthy food. You know, it's still food that has been processed and, you know, in some way or modified or filled with pesticides. So again, there is no control outside of the walls here. Like, you know, but I think that this is our sanctuary, and like, I think that's, you know, we're gonna fight hard to, you know, make it so and keep it, you know, as clean as we can within the constraints of the reality that we live in, you know, because we're not, you know, sadly, like, we're not at a point where we can afford organic food, even what they call organic, right? We can't, you know, and so we have a lot to navigate, you know. We'll see what we have capacity to do, because yes, we want to plant our own stuff, you know, we want to grow our own things, we want to have our own animals, but again, we're still within the system. I'm still a slave, a wage slave to this system, and probably in the worst conditions I've been in. You know, and like, I've been steadily moving towards a more and more incarcerated feeling, you know, and, you know, still hoping to get out of it, but, you know, but the sanctuary, that's where we have autonomy. I think we can paint the house, we, you know, like, it can be painted anywhere, anyway, we modified, you know, and that's been such a blessing, you know, to make it our way, you know. And because if you're a renter, obviously it's very limited things, you know. You don't, in San Francisco, you couldn't even use the yard. Like, the place we lived at, fancy ass fucking place. They had a yard that was not allowed to be used. It was empty the whole time. I literally knew people whose landlords locked the back, areas because, for them to not use. So there is potential, like we will need the resources, we will need some money to, get going, but the space we do have.
I'm so glad both of you have those visions for your child and the healthy environment. Just the time, the energy, being able to do those things, it's a challenge. I know I'm having a challenge doing I'm a lazy gardener and things grow and go wild, but there's a lot of volunteers that spring up from previous plots and stuff. But it really is a challenge. If I have a hard time and I have a flexible schedule, I only imagine working parents and trying to get things going. It is always a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge. So I feel it. No, we can move on. We can. Oh, and the other comment to what you said about yards not being used and landlords locking, that is so true. So true. I have seen so many people live in homes in SF, and I go to because I go family visits. I go and have meetings wherever families want to invite me, because they can't come to the school because they're like, oh my God, I'm so busy. So I'm like, okay, let's go organize at your house or wherever you want me to. And I see their yards, and I'm thinking, why don't your kids play out there? Oh, they don't let us use the yard. I'm thinking, what?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the time. It's 11:55. I know Jess has to get off soon. We're fine. I know Jess. I want to honor Jess.
I don't know if any time. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to hop off in like 5-10 minutes. I don't know.
So Jess, if you want to ask anything else before you hop off.
Well, maybe I'll just say then before we transition, and then I'll stealthily take away. I'm gonna be.
Leave your avatar there.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna remind Giddy and Cristal, I'm gonna be in San Fran/Oakland 2 weeks from today. So I wish I could have made it the weekend after for the shower if my spring break was a week later. But anyway, totally no pressure, but I would love to come say hey, or if you guys are, I don't know if you want to come all the way back to the crazy SF madness for me, but
you have to listen to the last part of the episode to understand why it's difficult for us.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. I just want to say, Jessica, I think it might be possible for us to get up there during your time. So
a little road trip, just
come to the Central Valley.
I would love that if we could make it happen.
I think that's kind of important. So I
have a barbecue.
We have a barbecue here, yeah.
Really? I know you guys are going to be so busy, like prepping for the shower and everything. So I don't want to just invite myself over.
We'll make time.
We'll bring everyone brings a potluck kind of meal thing, so you don't have to worry about food.
We'll make you.
Don't worry about food. It's okay.
We'll make you work. We'll make you do roll up.
I'm down. I'll plant seeds. I'll cook. I'll do whatever.
And we might even keep this on the episode because Kenny, I feel like when you said that thing about how you felt in remembering when you and Eduardo do our episodes together and the visceral feeling it had, it really made me realize that when Jessica's down here, we have to get up there. So,
we might record an episode over there.
Well, I mean, just
the four of
presence.
I just want to hang out. We can film an episode. If you want. I just want to hang out with you guys. That's all.
So the thing I want to say, it's interesting. I'm still going back to something Jessica said when she said how much shame people have about housing and being a renter versus a homeowner. And that is true, actually. You almost feel like I haven't got a home yet. I'm kind of a failure. Somebody else, like I haven't done what I was supposed to do. And Jessica, you're right to resist that shame, but I'm still reminded of this. You will own nothing and be happy. And there's a way in which they have already marched us down that road, because I know, Jessica, you're not about, well, I'm so happy that you took away, but because people are locked into their rental situation is more of a prison than a homeowner situation. That's what I'm remembering or being reminded by what you two are sharing about. Like, we can use our yard, we can paint our house, our kid can scrawl on the walls, our kid can make as much noise as it wants, making noise is important for a person, for any person, I think. But so it is just interesting how all these things that are part of the fourth industrial revolution framework have already been taking place. They're just being accelerated, and we've already been walked down that road. Kenny, when's the last time we saw you? And here and what's left?
It's been like 3 months, maybe. Because I started working at this place. I'm about to be 3 months, so I think it was like December or January.
What can you share about your journey, your and Cristal's journey, or your journey since that time? Like, what can you tell us and people who, because people have asked, when's Kenny coming back and how's he doing? So go ahead and share with us, and then share with whoever's here with us on what's left.
Well, yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, our journey is obviously we're together in this, and my journey affects us both. So I started working at this poultry company. It's pretty well known. I'm not gonna say the brand, but this is my first like industrial job. So I resisted. I didn't want to, and I still don't want to, but I have to for now. And so it's one of the best paying jobs in the area, like in terms of like for not a supervisory role, because I do have management experience. And I actually was offered like a supervisory role in this company where I would have gotten a decent amount of money with a lot more stress. Like I think by now I've learned the lesson of that carrot of salary, to enslave you, because when you're salary, you're expected to work 10 hours minimum. Any job, whether it was my last job where I was miserable, working for rich people, working 10, 12 hours sometimes. So here I consider getting this position. And so what I do is quality assurance. I'm a quality assurance technician. So we do a lot of like critical controls, like say you want to make sure the X-ray machines are working in the food production, temperatures are fine, that, there is no like cross-contamination of things, and filling out a lot of forms for the government because the USDA is present at the factory. And so, they can give what is called an NR, a no compliance report. And if you add those up, they can, penalize companies, blah, blah, blah. And so again, this is my first industrial job. This place is massive, like, and a lot of big companies, get their chicken from here. You think that their chicken comes from somewhere else, but it's not. It's from this company. And so, just for an idea of my day to day, like I have to wear a hairnet, a beard net, earplugs, helmet, smock, and that's part of the process to going into the plant. And sometimes sleeves, gloves, to interact with the product, whatever. And it's been a learning experience. On top of the learning curve of being in that industry, the way for me to get in was to work at night. So I've been working at night, and I work about at the beginning I worked about 10 hours every day because it's expected to work overtime. And at least in the position I was hired for, which because I do pre-operational checks, like have to make sure the machines are clean, sanitized, because USDA comes and checks it randomly. There is a lot of chemicals, chlorine, ozone, use acid that goes into the production process for your quote unquote organic chicken. And so, yeah. So again, long hours. My schedule at the beginning was going in at 10:50, getting off at 9 a.m. So 10:50 p.m. while you guys are sleeping, I've been working, and I had to sleep during the day. So that absolutely affects our relationship, like how we see each other. She spends a lot of the day by herself. I come home 9:30. I do work like 5 minutes away because we are in Middle America. This is like a company town in a way, like there's also a railroad nearby, because that whole thing with East Palestine reminds me of. And like I've brought it up, we talk about it, because that shit that happened over there could happen here. We are absolutely, middle America, like the stereotype, railroads, factories, and people that do make money from owning land, working on the land. Because that's the other option that I can have. I can go work in the field really hard and earn $16 an hour. And so, yeah, that's kind of like the basics of it. I work at night. I struggle to function. Sleeping during the day is not the same. I absolutely hate it. And I don't see the sun much. And as you guys have known in the show, like I love the sun. I love being outside. I love nature. I love walking. I love hiking. So I've had to give up all this, but we need income. And the other option is to become a restaurant manager at a fast food place. And but it's the same thing. A lot of stress, a lot of hours. Those are the options, and I'm over salary. It's such a prison. You do get quote unquote benefits. I do get benefits, get health insurance. They take money out of my paycheck. Even when baby comes, baby's added, and I decide to add her, I will have to pay like $300-400. I like $200 a paycheck, so it's like $400 a month, and that's like a good chunk of my income. And so that's my situation at the moment. Like I don't like it. I'm not happy. Like she knows it. I'm just doing it because I have to. And like and kind of buying time, I guess, for what's next. And because I'm hoping to switch to the daytime, which is another prison, because like daytime you go in at 9:30 and then you leave at 7 p.m. So you don't see the sun either way. And like, and at the same time, so this company was bought by a venture capitalist firm recently before I went in. And so the wages were actually increased. I think they were making like $14-15 or something like that.
Between like 15 to 17 for most people.
And then like they raised the wages for like the let's say like the general worker to $20. And so this is one of the highest paying jobs in the area. I get paid more because I'm a technician, I do more government involved job, and we get a differential for working at night, like a $2 extra, but in $1, whatever, they have complicated bullshit, and it adds up to nothing. It adds. But what I do realize though is that people are grateful to work there. Because it pays, compared to other jobs. The other option is go to the fields or commute all the way to Fremont to work at the Tesla factory, which is 2 hours every day, one way and the other way, 4 hours a day. And people have done that to work for Tesla, because Tesla did pay well. And that apparently that's a very common story. And so if we, we didn't have the support, like we'd be fucking screwed anyway. We're doing okay, but if we had to pay the rent that we paid in San Francisco, there's no way we can make ends meet by one person working. I would have to have another job, and so I think that a lot of people in the area kind of, not everyone, right? There is also poverty and stuff, but are okay or are do relatively okay because their parents bought houses and people live together. And so, $20 an hour, it's all right for them. But for someone who doesn't own a house and like doesn't have, that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any questions. That's kind of like basic.
I guess way back when you were, working at the front porch, early on, when I first knew you working at the front porch, would you have said you were happy working at your job?
I Yeah, honestly, like looking back, obviously things look different, right? Like in retrospective, but I was okay. I only worked 4 days a week, and I didn't have health insurance for a long time, but I could afford to travel. I had a degree of independence. I didn't have to work full 8 hours actually, and it was tips and it was inconsistent. But as a young person, I was all right. I was doing okay.
Yeah, and then I do remember it increasingly. It felt more and more like a trap, and more like a prison, particularly around the COVID period. It got more that way, and then you were like, I got to get out, and then you went to this other job, feeling in both a salary trap and a vax trap and a medical trap. Um, and then, like you noted, this other job became you became imprisoned within that salary, and that's what partly what you see. Like you were open to leaving San Francisco and going to the Central Valley. Um, do you feel like you've landed in another trap, or was it? Were you? May I ask? That's just what I'm asking. Is like, do you feel like, okay, here I'm, and here I do hear you talking like your life now really is at home with Cristal and thinking about bringing this child into the world. I do hear that, but here in your work life, are you now just in another trap? Is that what's happened?
I think so. I mean, the options are limited. I like I fight the urge to, like those voices inside my head, right? Is there something wrong with me? And I'm like, no, fuck no.
No.
There's nothing wrong with me. Like, this is not okay. We are slaves, right? Like we're slaves. A lot of people who listen regularly know how I see the world. And I do acutely see myself in that way. That, I am a slave, a wage slave. My options are limited. And I do feel that the walls are tighter, because this place is very regimented. They're full of bureaucratic bullshit that is just symbolic in some ways, to be honest. They just want to have a fallout, or like a scapegoats. I think that's what my position is. They make me sign bullshit that doesn't make sense, but obviously if shit goes wrong, then I'm in fucking trouble. And because we're doing bureaucratic shit that involves the government. And so yeah, in general, it is another trap, but like, like by now I understand that it's full of traps. It's like you gotta keep hopping around, and like until you find a place where you think you can rest until the next trap. Like especially now around COVID, like fortunately they're not, that's the COVID vaccine thing, pressures, harassment, coercion, it's behind me a little bit in terms of like my job experience. Because even my last job, the salary job, they didn't ask for it. We were coming out of that period of psychosis. And so that hasn't been a thing. It's more of the normal trappings of being a worker. And like increasingly this new company, like as expected, right? They increase wages and they're starting to clamp down in certain areas, maximize profit, things that are very ridiculous, like taking certain tools away, or they're quickly to fire people that get injured if it's their fault. And so yeah, it's just another trap. And like I don't know, I think what's changed is my awareness of it, and in like my unwillingness to just subject, to this is the way it is, like because I feel like a lot of people are conditioned, not just in this job, but in my last job, where I used to try to talk to other restaurant managers, hey, like, is this normal? And it's like, yeah, that just comes with the job, working 10, 12 hours. They just accept it, and yeah. But I think the traps are there, and like, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just more aware of them.
Then maybe I guess the question I would have from there is, how do you feel it's helped, or how do you feel like this move has helped you? And Cristal, I'd like to hear from you. how the two of you in your relationship. I imagine it wasn't very helpful to feel like you could be in a relationship in Bay Area when you're both miserable in that situation. How has it helped your relationship, and what's been the challenges of, building a relationship? Like I think about me and Brandy when we were getting married, which are not the stakes, but the pressure was there, and that pressure can, as we were building up for the wedding, that pressure I know can create divisions. In our case, that pressure made us closer, and I'm glad about that. I mean, I don't know if this is too personal a question to ask for what's left, but I am curious about it, and I am curious how you would both respond to the kinds of pressures because you're both under pressure, but different kinds of pressures, but yet you're sharing them because you're trying to do this together for each other and your daughter.
I think a lot has changed. I know that having a baby, coming has been a massive reason as to why a lot of that has changed. But I think during this time, it could be also that we're in a different environment. I'm sure that also plays into it, but I think we've made tremendous strides in our relationship. I think we are closer than ever. I think we understand each other better than ever. We have more capacity to understand each other and to be good partners to each other, as well as hear like what we both need as individuals. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I agree with that. Like, despite me not being super happy at my job, and like, I think taking some of the other stressors off the table, like, having to worry about housing, or like seeing the entirety of our paycheck gone, not because like we're the irresponsible, whatever, like we literally weren't, like we were just, it's just hard. And yeah, we managed to like communicate more, and like just the fact that she doesn't have to work, like, we see each other more, because if she had a different schedule than me, like I think your parents did for a long time, right? Like they didn't see each other. And like we are also very much committed to the, like our priority is us, our family, and like we'll have to do whatever we have to do, because
even if that means not having a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
That means not being able to, redo our kitchen, like we have other priorities. And I think having that sort of like alignment in our values and in what it is that we want in life is what will hopefully also create like a good environment for our daughter, and a safe place for her, and a loving place for her, and for us too.
Yeah, and I just want to tell you that same thing you said, Kenny, about kind of that's about being essentially the breadwinner, and then the Cristal being the wife at home, and taking care of the kid, which the kid's not there yet, but that actually is sort of how things are working out for me and Randy without us having a kid. We have a dog, so but honestly, that is more and more. I would like it to be the possibility of Brandy moving away from to working less for us, so that, I mean, and she does organizing. I would like her to be able to do more of that, and that's just the way it's worked for us. I mean, we can't do that, but I feel like both of us would welcome her transitioning away from a formal job and me just using my job to bring income in, and then that would allow us to, I think, live a better life together, which is really what our life is about. So just want to say we're on the same boat for, and also I want to say, having we interviewed JD and Jay, who were the people from the school, and I know Kenny, you, and I've met you, Cristal, but I honestly feel like even electronically, you both come across couple-wise as like those two, which I think is very much supporting each other and just like checking with each other. So I'm very happy to hear that it's helping you build things, as opposed to, it's all meant to crack us. All this stuff is meant to crack us and crack relationships and crack individuals. And I'm really glad you've been able to find a way of helping turning into something stronger for you. So that makes me happy.
It's been a road. We've had our share of problems. The stress got to us in different ways, and I think moving away, honestly, I think we probably saved our relationship.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Because yeah, like you said, it is meant to crack you, and so I'm glad in that sense we are, at a good place to have a kid, and give our kid a good chance to have a good home.
Just putting this out there, if you ever need me to call me to organize, I think there's always ways to still organize as parents. I used to tell Jonathan, my brother, with his child, I used to say, you can still organize with other fathers and other babies and still meet with them and talk about how you can raise your child in a healthy environment, And now we're organizing at his school. You don't have to keep your organizing life outside. You don't have, your organizing is now around your child, and maybe it's not with the unhoused people you used to work with, Cristal, or Kenny, with immigrant families or people that you worked with before. It's now anything around your child. I always think it's, so I hope that you both still stay in la lucha. Right. Whether you said homeschooling, so whether it's homeschooling and networking with other familias that are in the area and having, what I did maybe at my house where I was working, I brought families here, and then you do that with them, or you go to a school and you organize a collective of families so that they can speak up for themselves wherever it is. I hope, I know it will happen. I'm just saying it. And the light everywhere, bringing light wherever you are.
I think that's inevitable for us. In some way, we're both opinionated, or we just have a way of seeing things, and I think we've learned our lessons, and our kid obviously is it's our mission now, and but at least for me, and I think for you too, we understand that our kid can't grow in isolation, and it means community, it means other kids, and especially trying to go against the grain, you need people to row with you, and we hope we can find them, and we're aware that
I hope so.
We have to, and
new relationships.
Yeah, and exactly, we're aware. It's especially with the things that we see coming, right? It's gonna take support, and we'll see where we find that, and keep going forward.
Yeah, I've had to learn that myself. My educated friends suddenly I moved away from them to now different relationships, and maybe you'll create a network of beautiful, wonderful relationship with those communities that have parents that are working in the fields or in the same industry as you, Kenny, or other families. I imagine so.
You haven't been there that long, so this is you're just the beginning, and you've certainly had a lot of things to attend to from the jump,
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not easy, a lot of things happen at once, and trying to settle, and hopefully just hoping for the best too, because I'm aware that there's things out of our control, right? And I don't want to be afraid of them, but I personally, not to be too somber, but I work in that fucking factory, and I know we have thousands of gallons of ammonia, for cooling shit. We have railroads here, so that is Palestine, and we hope for the best, right? But also I want to be aware that, I don't want to be fucking blindsided by everything, all at once. And so we do hope for the best. And, there's still there's been issues with water at times in different towns, in terms of being contaminated because there is industrial farming. And again, as the people of East Palestine learned, they can be uprooted in 2 seconds, and so again, preparing for the best. Yeah, Senator.
And maybe I'm curious if both of you would either, what are the sorts of things outside of, Cristal preparing to be a mom, Kenny preparing to be a dad and working at work? What are the sort of things you've been paying attention to in the world, and just sort of generally been those extra things we haven't really had a chance to discuss here? I'm curious what's gotten your attention. Mine has been just thinking and looking at Ukraine and Russia, and that's just obsesses me. So I'm just kind of curious, what are the sorts of things that are really occupying your mind and time in these last few months?
Well, I'm in the similar train that you are. I'm always checking that stuff, kind of sort of the macro view of things. I keep up with the news, and I was joking with her that I make up sarcastic lines about the headlines that they write and laugh. I see the news as these tabloid magazines, right? Like people ridicule. So I do try to keep up to see what's happening, listen to things in general, Ukraine, China, technology. I go through an array of news. I think that's I've also been diving a little into the vaccine stuff, the legality of it, because it's a nightmare here in California. But yeah, I think, but outside of that, I think that, that's never going to change for me. But more than that, I think for me, the part that has given me real grounding has been working on the home.
I was gonna say
that. I painted this whole house. The majority of it, her family helped, but I'm painting the baby's room right now. 1 hour after work when I'm tired. 1 hour after work, and I'm gonna go do that right now after this episode. That gives me my space. I listen to whatever the hell I want. I focus on a task, and I create beauty and see the result of it without someone dictating or mediating how and why, and so, that's kind of my combination of listening to the outside, because I'm listening to the news and stuff, while focusing on something that gives me great joy. And because that's how I manage that stuff, because obviously it can be fucking depressing to just, keep up with the world news.
I think for me, I have been utilizing this time as grounding time. I think for the first time in years, nobody's livelihood depends on me, because I was doing organizing for a long time with migrants and trans women, and then from that I was doing the nonprofit work as well as some other organizing, and then I just had a lot of issues with my health, mental health, and also my physical health. And so now here I am, I'm just nesting, I'm organizing, I'm building a home, I'm creating, trying to create this home for us both and for our child to come. And it's felt really good to me to not have to do anything other than just be. And of course, there's limits with that, because it's not like there's a lot of money we're dealing with, or a lot of I don't know, the things are limited, but it's also unbelievably freeing to just be able to not have to be in survival mode and not have to deal with anything other than myself right now. Like I've really needed that.
Well, I mean, I think that's the only questions for me, Eduardo. I don't know if you want to ask. I just appreciate you both. Cristal in particular, I really am glad you decided to join Kenny's return episode. Don't get used to it, folks. I think it's just going to be this one time for now. And we'll see if we can pull him back later for something else. But I think it was critical, Cristal, to have you here. And I'm really glad that you chose to join us on this.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and, wanting to have me here. It means a lot, especially because I know how much this means to him and how important this is for him. And, I know he'd be part of every episode if he could.
Yeah. And I think I might be back soon. Actually, I'm gonna switch. Supposed to switch to the daytime soon. So if you're willing to record a little later, I might be able to join back. Because absolutely, this is important to me. Like this is therapy to me.
It is.
And so yeah. So
that'll be awesome. That'll be awesome. And I'll just let you know, we're interviewing JD specifically around her stuff around midwifery on March 30th. So I'm really looking forward to that episode. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironically or whatever, by pure luck, I think that a lot of what we've talked about in What's Left, it has given me a lot of preparations for being a parent.
Absolutely.
And, dealing with the world that our child is coming into.
How to carve out a little freedom and autonomy within a system that I don't even know. But when all these people like JD and the woman that Jessica knows talking about literally before conception, the trap is being set for a child. And then the whole process the mother goes through is described as a prison, and really bad. I don't know the whole story, but the way that even just to hear JD talk about it that way, it's like, whoa, damn, that's intense.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be surprised, but because that's the system. But I'm constantly being reminded of how every place is a trap.
Yeah.
The full cycle of life is.
Yes, it's like what is the Lion King, but really bad story. It's not as uplifting.
You even have to pay rent when you go to the grave, or someone has to.
Yeah. Eduardo, any last thoughts?
No, I appreciate, having Cristal on as well. I mean, it's not very easy to come online and to be seen by a lot of people that watch us or listen to us. So it's always cool that people could come on and feel comfortable with us. And it's always nice to have Kenny back. I know people have been asking about, where's Kenny? Your name lives up to your name from.
That's from South Park.
Something similar.
Who killed Kenny? Who killed Kenny?
Oh, he's not dead. He's alive. The chicken factory is trying to kill him. But
exactly. I'm some people at work say, you're a slave to the chicken now.
All right. Well, let's conclude and just stay with us for a minute or so, and then we'll say goodbye. All right. So, that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes where we found this episode, or on our blog at whatsleftpodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you have heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications to any of our platforms on Spotify, iTunes Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. And you can find find our blog in any of those links in the episode notes where we found this episode. If you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. I'm Eduardo Barca with co-host Jessica, Kenny Cepeda, and Kenny Cepeda. It's always the and that I'm not used to now suddenly because of Kenny, but Kenny's back, and thank you so much for having us, for being with us, Kenny and Cristal, very much so.
Thank you.
See you next time. Ciao.